What's different about Jeremy Hefner the last 2 times out?
Well, I mean, it's all about command, and he's, you know, the other day in Miami, I mean, his stuff was, his velocity was up, his command was better, heading the count, you know, therefore, you know, gets pitchers to, or gets hitters to chase a little bit. So when he's, you know, when he's getting ahead, you know, he pitches very well.
Terry, with a night to reflect, where do you put Matt's game last night on the all-time games?
Well, that's the best game I've seen. Yeah, you know, probably Johan's no-hitter last year was, you know, maybe one of the most exciting, but certainly as far as just a purely pitch game, that was probably the best one I've ever had.
Terry, was it particularly eye-popping to you that with all the concern about the command that he would have after the length of time off, that he had as good a command as he did?
I was very, very amazed by it. I thought, you know, he would have the tendency to overthrow a little bit because he was so rested and so strong, but he really didn't. You know, he stayed within himself, and you know, as he's done so far, when he needed when he needed a real good fastball, he reached back and got it. But otherwise, you know, again, it was he was 95, 96, or I mean 94, 95, but when he needed it 96, 97, he went and got it because it was still there. But I just thought the way he handled himself, you know, mixing pitches, but really, he's throwing so many strikes, you know, forcing him to swing the bat, and therefore when he got his strikeouts, he got a lot of them on his own.
Does that almost suggest that, and I understand there's a big physical component to it, that sometimes when a pitcher does have as much rest as he does, or did last night, and all you hear for a couple of days going in is, you know, well, let's see if he's got his command. Sometimes that's as much a psychological thing as it is a physical thing, and was there a little lesson in what happened last night?
Well, you know, we can go back to John Neese. He had the same amount of, he had a lot of good rest also, and you know, John lives and dies with his sinker. Well, it wasn't sinking because he had, you know, he was a little too strong. In Matt's case, you know, he's not such a two-seam guy where, you know, and again, I think you know, the fact that he had thrown, at least had a side to work on something shortly before he had to get out there, I thought it also made a big difference and helped him.
Yeah, sure. Just curious, have you ever seen anything like that first inning with blood on his face and everything? Any other game at any level?
No, not really. You know, I was concerned about it too because, you know, if we couldn't have stopped the bleeding, which, you know, we had plenty of things we were going to do had to go out there, but you know, I didn't know if it was what a part of an annoyance it was going to be for him. You know, you saw him; he was always wiping his nose, and you know, once it starts getting on uniforms, now the umpires may get involved because it's obviously an issue. So, but you know, as he's done so far, he ignored it and went about his job. And again, that's why he's a different cat.
Terry, you mentioned Neese was too strong. That game also came after the 2 games where he pitched was very cold, the Minnesota game out in Colorado. Is there any residual effect from pitching in the cold that might have hurt?
Well, there could have been. You know, he had a little stiffness in his upper back. With it, he got a little treatment on. He didn't let it. You know, he said it didn't hurt him to pitch, but that certainly didn't help. I'm sure. You know, the fact that he was a little stiff after those two outings where, you know, he needed some extra treatment, and you know, his sides weren't as effective as he wanted them to be. But he felt great yesterday. That was, I thought, was a real good sign. So, you know, we're just getting back out there, and you know, as I told him, I said, look, you know, we're going to look up in 28 more starts, and you know, your numbers are going to be where they're supposed to be.
There were a few at bats, Terry, where David had to play in at third because this is a nothing game, and they've got guys who can bunt. Were you at all thinking along, kind of like, damn it? I mean, if we had a few runs, baseball code is such that David doesn't have to play in, or did that enter your mind at all?
No, it never entered my mind. You know, we were just trying to make sure we had guys in situations with certain guys up where if they were going to bunt, we had to get an out because it was 0-0, and it never occurred to me had we had a few runs that they wouldn't bunt. You know, I don't. That never.
That code doesn't figure in as far as you're.
I'm not really sure. So.
Mike.
Terry, just looking at Matt from last year to this year, obviously when he came up last year, you saw all the potential and all the live arm and all of that. But he was a guy who, at least at first had trouble getting deep into games, foul balls, deep counts, stuff like that. It seems like the change-up for him is a marked improvement from last year to this year. But what else would you point to as someone who came up that way, having trouble getting deep into games, and now seems to do it so easily, getting deep all the time?
Well, I still think it has to do with the command of the pitches, all his pitches. He's not just trying to overpower hitters. There's times when he wants to get some easy outs, so he pitches to contact, which means, hey, look, I'm going to throw a ball on the outer half of the plate and see if I can get a fly ball to the center field, which is helping him because he's now, instead of having a 7-pitch at bat, he has a 3-pitch at bat. And you have enough of those, it adds up. And he's gotten, and again, the scouting reports like it is when we face Jordan Zimmerman or somebody else. Look, this guy's pounding the strike zone. If you let him get ahead, he's going to get you out.
So, a mental approach is like the biggest thing you would point to that he.
Well, I don't, again, I think it's a combination of mental and the fact that his mechanics are so much better that, he's throwing so many more strikes.
Anything else, guys? Yes, sir.
What aspects of Jordani Valdesman's game do you believe he has to improve on in this season? And do you see him starting with more regularity toward down the road?
Well, first of all, he's a young player, and so when you talk about what does he need to improve on, it's about pretty much everything. When you're a young player at this level, there's not a phase that you have perfected. So, he's got to, and again, I'm the first guy to stand up, and I'll take the heat for putting him out of his position. Right now we need him in the outfield, so that's where he's playing. He's not an outfielder by trade; he's an infielder. So, there's going to be some bad routes now and again that he's going to take on some balls that he's not used to. To seeing. So, the other part is offensively, I want him to be himself. Just because he hit home runs doesn't mean he's a home run hitter. He got here because he was a guy who was a good hitter. And we've been trying to pound it into him a little bit to make sure you stay with that game. Get on base, score some runs. That's why we decided to lead him off tonight, to change his mindset a little bit, to realize, hey, look, I got to go back and being that kind of a leadoff hitter instead of that guy who's pinch hitting and trying to hit a ball in the ballpark. So, but he's a talented kid. He's got skills, and hopefully he'll make the adjustments.
Any last ones? Good.
Jerry, last night, in the 10th inning, Davis walked. Can you talk about that walk as an indication that he might be snapping out of it a little
Well, for me, it was a great at-bat for him. Because right there in that situation, a guy like Ike Davis is going to try to hit a home run. And when you're not swinging good, the one thing you want, a lot of times the thought process is, hey, this one swing can change me. But yet he did. One of the things that he's been having trouble doing is swinging balls that aren't in the strike zone. And last night he made, when he got to be deep in the count, he did go fishing for it. He laid off a big pitch and got on base. And because again, I think he realizes, look, they're not going to give me a ball to hit right here. And so the one thing that he'll tell you, he's been doing is getting himself out a little bit. And last night he laid off that pitch.
One more on Ike. How did you decide, what was the thought process to not pinch run for him after the walk?
Gary, we pinch hit so much. If that game goes the 11th inning, we'd have been out of players. The pinch ran for Ike, you're going to have to run Marlon Byrd. 2 innings later, had we go extra innings, we got left coming up with Thornton in the bullpen and nobody hit for him. So, we would have had to use Turner to hit for the pitcher. So I just said I cannot, right now, with the way we are used to hitting for certain guys, we run out of players faster than any team I've ever had in my life. So, we got to be careful of burning guys in tie games when you all of a sudden look up in the 12th inning or the 11th inning, you got a chance to win the game, you had nobody to hit. So, that's why.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, you're welcome.